Hello, and what is up, everyone? Welcome back. Another episode here on the Matt Staley Show. So today, I really wanted to pay attention and put a little bit of focus on the concept of choice, right? So, when you think about, there's a bunch of different kind of pitfalls and traps and mental inefficiencies that we kind of run into. It's like when our brain wants to shortcut and find the answer because it wants to preserve energy. We actually talk about that a lot here. We're kind of tapping into the very, very outskirts of neuroscience, but it's very much the concept today specifically. So we talk about choice here actually a lot, and so I don't want to go with the kind of general theme of like, oh yeah, you have choice and it's up to you, and if you choose to do something, then the fallout from those choices are what you get, and you get what you get, and it's to the extreme ownership. We've talked about that too. Extreme ownership in the sense of everything's my fault. But in a way that is productive. That's kind of the way that we put the spin on it here, is that if everything is my fault, that means that all of the good things that happen and transpire are also my fault. All of the good and all of the bad. We initially and immediately put fault as associated with negativity, and that's in due course. But if we then change it and we say, instead of everything is my fault, every single aspect of my life is a result of the decisions that I have made, then that's the same thing, and it's kind of taking away the negativity and looking at it more easily in the sense of both positive and the negative, right? And so the thing is, it's a real general look, and we've talked about it before, and it will almost assuredly come up again. But I didn't want to hit it in such broad strokes today, and I think the reason is because there's so much going on right now. When it comes to the kind of national landscape in the United States specifically. So, and I know I specify that because I know that there is actually a fairly large portion of this audience that's not here in the United States. And so, but this is, if you follow it at all, or if and a lot of people do, because I heard this expression actually is if the United States sneezes, another place gets a cold, and so it's or gets the flu. Basically, like, we get a small symptom, and when something small falls out here, then there are implications across the world because we do business with everyone. It's a global economy now. And so I don't want to dive too much into the politics and into the economics of things. There's plenty of shows out there that do that and do a really, really good job at them. I don't want to do that. What I want to do is look at the human reaction to these things and kind of intertwine it with the things that we talk about here when we talk about resilience and we talk about grit and overcoming obstacles and not just bouncing back from negativity, not just bouncing back from trials and tribulation, but to actually gain strength and gain momentum in the face of it. Yeah, see, every time, man, I gotta really get better about this whole phone thing. Wants to be all give me notifications and stuff. It's actually a really good notification. It's a good personal side note before we get into things. It has been a heck of 2 days at this point. So what was it? Yesterday morning, or perhaps the day before. It doesn't matter. At any rate, at some point very recently, my neighbors were doing some construction work on their house, some outdoor landscaping, some like big renovation kind of stuff, like resodding the whole yard, and all of that. And so it's and it's great, they always do a good job. Their house is well kept and well maintained. They're really, really nice people. We get along really well. I love them. And usually the guy that I know, he does all of the work himself, right? And it's really, really, really good. Like, he does a really good job. It's impressive. I'm not that guy. Like, I want to be that guy, but I'm not that guy. so we actually built a pretty cool garden thing in the back, and it's we call it the good enough garden, because as we would get to points when it was getting really, really difficult to make things perfect, my Yaz and I would look at each other and we go, "It's good enough." and then the kids were here and everything. We're all working together, and it eventually just became known as the good enough garden. And so that's the difference. Is that next door it's the right angles are right angles, and in here they're close, they're close enough. So, but anyway, he actually hired out some people to do the work for him. And so they showed up, and they got a bobcat, and they've got a bunch of large equipment, to get the yard all prepped and everything. And apparently at some point they dug up into the ground and they broke the internet cable. And so it took, we went through, we did all the normal stuff. We went through and we unplugged the modem, and we plugged it back in, and we reloaded, and then we called the people that we get internet through, and we went through the steps with them. They're like, "Did you do them?" Like, "Yeah, we already reset the modem. Yeah, we unplugged it and plugged it back in." Yeah, and they were like, "Okay, well, there's like a box, somewhere, a control box." So we went and found it, and there's like a hard reset button on it. So we hard reset. We went through everything. It was only, and then we had to make an appointment. Like, "Okay, we've gone through all the steps. We've got to send somebody out. They can come out today." "Oh, just kidding. They can come out tomorrow." And we're like, "Oh, that's great." It's great because it's not like I run an online business, a podcast. I work remotely 3 days a week. Our daughter is going to online school, and some days Yaz is working from home too. So it's not really that important, right? It's just so it's thank goodness for hotspots, because that came in, that saved the day yesterday. I turned my phone into a hotspot, and that provided our daughter with the ability to continue her school and for me to work, and then it ran out. I didn't know that hotspots could run out, but they can. And we ran it out. So it's been a heck of some days, and so we roll into today because they were, like I said, they just, "Oh, we're gonna send somebody out today." "Oh, just kidding, we can't do that. There's no more slots today. We'll send them out tomorrow between 9 and 11. So 10:30 comes around, we call them. They're like, "Yeah, no, it's still coming." Okay. And then 11:30 rolls around, and Yaz calls, and they're like, "Oh yeah, he's running behind, but he'll be there by 1. We'll extend the time, and we apologize for the inconvenience. He'll be there by 1. 1:30 rolls around, and we're like, "All right, man, what's going on?" They're like, "Okay, he's spending no more than another half an hour at this at his job, and even if he can't get, for some reason the place he was at they were having a really hard time getting it put together. But so eventually he leaves. So that was the message that I got, and that's the reason it made me think about this whole situation. Was that sent me a message that said that she thinks the internet's up, and so I don't know. It might be. I got stuff flashing at the bottom of the screen. It looks like the internet is up. Huzzah! That's great. It's wonderful. But it's interesting. It actually feeds into the kind of discussion that I want to have today about choice. In the more broad scheme of things, and just to loosely tie this back in, what I what I did was I found a way, right? And I set my phone up to be a hotspot. I found another way, and if that wasn't the case, then I would have found another way. And it's whether it's going to a neighbor's house or whatever the case may be, we're gonna find a way to get to a yes. And it's not getting frustrated with the people who provide the internet, because at that point we didn't know it was the cable that was cut. So it's not about getting super upset with them and just calling them awful, terrible people. It's about finding a way to get it done. It's finding a way to do the things that matter, and to stay productive and serve our purpose in this world. Which, the interesting thing when you think about it is that you never serve your purpose through anger. There's no purpose that's served through anger. Anger is purely a means of control. And so when you feel like things are getting out of control, then you can't work out how to reattain a level of control or your position in the world, and you're trying to reestablish whether it be dominance or position. It's not even necessarily like that, but reestablish a sense of normalcy and control over the situation. We will sometimes default to anger, and being non-confrontational, like most people are on an individual level. I would say probably on average more people are more non-confrontational than are confrontational. They want to avoid the pain and the friction that comes with conflict. And as such, the people that default to anger see it as a means to an end that works, right? And this goes into some of the stuff that we do in the training, and when we talk about the mental pathways and how we establish those neural networks inside of our brain. We establish those highways of really, really, really fast thought, and it's by leapfrogging some steps. And one of the things that we do is that we see that a particular action works, right? And so if an event occurs and I reacted in a certain way, and the result was in the category of things that I find to be acceptable, or maybe even perhaps it's in the category of things that I desire, and beyond acceptable to the point where, that this is what I want. And you saw that, these, and the thing is that none of this is happening like in the prefrontal cortex, right? None of it's happening in like the decision-making zone. It's maybe it is. I'm not a neuroscientist, but I'm like, it's not something that you're consciously doing. You're not like, oh, well, the last time my kid didn't listen and I yelled at him, he did what I wanted. And so now I know the next time he does something dumb, I'm going to yell at him and he's not going to do it again. Right? And so like, that's not a shortcut, right? It's like we already figured out. It's like we've received chemically the response, and we're like, once they did what we wanted, we felt good. Like, oh, good. Like, and there's chemical responses that are happening. And so our brain is like, oh, in order to get to that chemical response, like when this thing happens and when we feel this way, so when this chemical is released, this negative chemical is released, which is what happens when you see your kid doing something that you don't want to. And this doesn't have to be your kid. It could be anybody. It could be any person, any situation or relationship that where an event occurs that's not positive, right? And it sends a signal, right? And so you are responding to this stress hormones, the cortisol and the things like that. And like, okay, well, when that happens, I perform X action. So in this particular case, we're saying screaming or yelling. And then that ends up resulting in obedience, and that obedience gives us the positive chemical release, Our brain shortcuts like, oh, okay, well, when we feel this cortisol in this level in this areas, then we want to do that again. We want to get there faster. So instead of sitting there and trying to figure out the best way to respond to the situation, well, let's just do the same thing we did last time, and let's see what happens. And so you do it, and you keep doing this. You keep asserting aggressive control in an environment and in a society where people want to not be confrontational, where people are non-confrontational. Then you see over and over again, you're like, oh, well, I'm getting results. People are avoiding and people are being obedient and they're listening, and this is great. This is exactly what I want. Like I'm getting my way over and over again, and this works. And so why would you stop? And it's takes further introspection. It takes observation of things outside of the specific task at hand. You have to look at yourself and figure out, like, what kind of person do I want to be? What kind of relationships do I want to have? Do I want to have this commandeering, super aggressive and controlled presence and have that be the baseline of my relationships? Or do I want to have something different? And the same thing can go for anything. Like, do I want to be super passive and have that be the baseline? And it's you don't want to look at just the end result of what you're getting. You want to look at all of the things that are falling out between here and there. Okay, that was all in the general swaths of this, and it's looking at what you get, looking at the actions that you take and what they produce, and not just what in that specific category, right? But in the sphere of everything and how it affects everything, like we just talked about. So that was that. But okay, what are we actually talking about today? When I talked to I'd kind of given a little bit of a heads up or a foreshadowing. In the sense that it's going to be a little bit political, and it's just going to be the things. There's a particular political issue at hand right now in the United States that is kind of causing like a very large emotional reaction. It's very interesting. It's very, very interesting because people, it seems to me that in this day and age where we get further and further separated from God and religion, that we as a people and as individuals, we need to find something to replace it, right? So if we're not having faith in a higher energetic being, a higher moral power that exists outside of humanity, and we're not going to believe that that's true. And if you do, then you do. And I'm not casting any moral judgments upon people that do or do not believe. I'm simply making an observation from where I sit, and that observation is that in the gap, like there's a power vacuum. Being in the military for 11 years, you got to see it, and especially in the intelligence field, because we would do a lot of research on the world and on the enemies of the United States, and what playing out scenarios like what would happen if they do X, and what's happening over there, and what's that going to lead to. And so we did a lot of observational stuff, and so you'd see, if you topple an evil dictator leadership, what happens after that? What happens when you destroy that higher power? The thing that leads the people, even if it's leading it awfully. There's something that happens if you go in and you smash him to bits. If you take that guy out, or gal. There's plenty of tyrannical women out there. I don't want to leave you ladies out. But there's a power vacuum, right? After you remove this power entity that is, and the more control, the more aggressive control that they have over the people's lives, it is like directly correlated to the level of the power vacuum that's there, and that will be filled. It will. It turns into that vacuum. It's literally what it is, a power vacuum. It's sucking things into it. I think of it more as like a magnet. Like for anybody that's attracted, who's like I'm going to show my ignorance. Like the South connects to the North Pole on magnets, right? That's how that works. Like North repels North. So for anybody that is polarized in such a way where they're attracted to power, then they're gonna be immediately attracted to this power vacuum, right? And so when we think about the space of what God held, it's that, right? And so as in the United States, as we've generally shifted further and further away from that, what seems to be happening, and at least this is the way, I mean, there's it's kind of hard to track, right? Because there's only certain ways to track like national trends and what people are thinking, and it's through polls, it's through statistics, which are unbelievably skewed depending on who's doing them and for what reason, and it's just a very, very it's a risky business. I actually heard today in a class that was a saying that's perfect, and when they were talking about modeling, but the same is true for statistics. It's that all models are wrong, but some are useful, right? And so it's like the same thing with statistics, but statistics can be so wrong that they can actually leave you with a false impression of what's going on, right? And so we have polls. Polls can do the same thing based on the way that things are worded and who they're deciding to poll, and it's a hard business. And so you look at like media, and if you looked at the national media in the United States, you would see that everything is just so political. Every single thing that happens is all baked into politics, and it's like politics and those who desire higher political power and authority and presence and that perception of I am here to help you. It's they are the ones that are filling that gap, which, I mean, it could be initially worse, right? It could be very large, powerful terrorist organizations, or I mean, you don't have to call it terrorist. There's so much charge and energy with that. But think of any sort of aggressive. I mean, think about the mafia. You think about like organized crime and these kinds of things. These are things that are attracted to power and that will fill in a power void and in a vacuum. And when we're thinking about the vacuum that we're talking about, this is the vacuum of a higher power. And so when we started to shift as a culture and look at government as this higher power, like, oh, well, through government we can change people's lives, and we have the ability to do so many great things, and they are the bearers and keepers of the tools necessary to make real change, and it's all of that is we're putting, as a culture and society, our faith into government. And so it's a claim, right? That's a claim that I'm making, and I assert the facts, the reality And I don't want to use outliers as statistical proof, but there are more than a couple of instances of people right now reacting very emotionally to something that shouldn't be very emotionally charged. So a Supreme Court justice died, Ruth Bader Ginsberg, and she there's so much with it. I don't even want to get into the politics of it. The thing is, it's a big political game. Whether it should be or shouldn't be, and how it's being handled, and all of that is like I said, that can be handled and is handled on other shows. So, but the bottom line is that one person who holds one seat on a panel of 9 passed away at the age of 84, something like that. Older lady, lived a long, good life and ended up passing away. And there was a post that I saw from a good friend, and it was a repost. So she didn't say it, but there's so much concurrence with this feeling that it's disheartening to me. But basically, it was. She said that the original poster of this said something to the effect of, when I heard about Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death, I wanted to mourn for her. I wanted to think and pray for her family. I wanted to have a day of respect, and be there for her. In remembrance of her and what she's done, and honor her, and because she really did, just on a little bit of the history side, she really did help open doors and open perception. She wasn't the first one. She wasn't like the first female Supreme Court justice, but she was one of very few. And she, through all the actions that she had taken in her life, she really did help set and help to establish new precedents in what women could do and the type of success that they could achieve. And she's been doing it for her whole life. It's an incredible, incredible thing, and very empowering. And to that, so much respect and love. Game changers, that's amazing. And so, but the lady goes on, and she's saying all the things, all of these thoughts and all of these emotions and all of these actions that she wanted to have. Instead, what she felt was fear. And she followed it up by saying that, and I will never forgive them for that. And this was a cut at the Republican Party. And just to do a quick breakdown, so the Republicans are going to, they own the portion, they have a majority over the portion of government that will assess and give the thumbs up or the thumbs down on the approval for Ruth Bader Ginsburg's replacement. And that person is put up and nominated by the president, and then they are evaluated and either approved or denied the role by the majority of the people in the Senate. And that is owned by the Republicans. And so the thing here is that, without going into the things that this woman probably fears happening, there are many things that she may believe are going to be taken away, many rights that she feels that she has, that upon replacement with a Supreme Court justice from another who views interpretation of constitutional law differently, which is the basis of the job. God, it's really hard to try to weave in and out of this political territory without diving full on into it. She's afraid that things are going to change in a way that she doesn't like because someone else is going to take the job. And she's afraid that her personal life is going to be affected, right? And so it's an interesting thing, what we choose to invest our time and energy into. And like, that's how I started the show off, is talking about we are a net result, and where we are is a net result of the things that we've chosen to do and the actions we've decided to take in our lives. And so, and the other part of that, the completion of that equation, is in response to the events in the world around us, right? And so we talked about the futility of anger. I want to talk about the futility of fear, right? And so this lady is afraid. She's fearful. She's so fearful that when she heard about the death of this lady that she's probably never met and probably couldn't even tell you any of her decisions that she's wrote, but that's neither here nor there. Let's say she could. Her first reaction is that she couldn't mourn this woman's death. She was afraid of the impact on her own life. And to me, it's a sad state of affairs when any human being places so much stock and energy and of their life into something that's completely out of their control, right? If you're I mean, when you think about it in the most literal sense, if your mental stability, or if the calmness of your spirit and mind is rooted in the health of an 84-year-old woman who had pancreatic cancer, we have to start looking at our lives and figuring out what it is that we're doing. Why have I volunteered so much control over my emotional well-being? Why have I voluntarily given that up and handed it over to anybody else other than myself? I just had this conversation today, I think it was, and it was about no one in this world is going to look out for you better than you are. It does not matter who you're speaking of. No one else has your own best interests in mind more than you do. And if that's not the case, then you're setting yourself up for failure. And now, I know some of you are probably hearing that and you're thinking, oh my God, what a selfish, absolutely awful, self-centered way to look at the world. I can't believe that you actually think that. Like, well, I do actually think that. And it's not a thought, it's just a fact. It's a fact of reality. And the thing is, this is where you might feel like I'm splitting hairs, but I'm really not. Isn't that there's a difference between being self-interested and being selfish, right? And so if I'm being selfish, then I am viewing other people and the relationships in my life as tools to get me where I want to go. Which means when you think about it, I use a tool in a way that I need to get the job done. What happens to the tool, it doesn't really matter. The more unique the tool is, maybe the better I treat it if it's hard to get another one. But if it's a general tool and it's pretty cheap and there's a whole bunch of them, probably not going to worry too much about taking the best care of that tool. And so I think in this analogy, the tools are people. Tools are people in your life. So if I'm selfish, I'm going to work to my own end and I will use you to help me get there. It'll be at your dismay. It'll be at your expense, right? That is going to be how I operate. Now, if I'm self-interested, you have to think about the things that actually benefit me in a way that aren't also detrimental, right? I am not going to look for relationships to meet one end. This goes back to the conversation we're having earlier again, where I'm not going to be, if I'm looking in my own personal self-interest, I cannot look at a single relationship that I have with a person in one vein, in one light, in one category. I can't look at the person that I work with and think, oh, I'm going to sit there, I'm gonna take everything they know, and then I'm gonna beat them out for the next position. I'm gonna take everything they know and I'm gonna learn it and I'm gonna get it from them, and then I'm gonna beat them out for that position. Like, no, that benefits you in one way, but it also hurts you in the sense that you're not building a network. So like your network is weak. You've stabbed somebody in the back, right? And so then your professional network is weakened, and so that's not in your best interest. Your best interest is to have a good, robust network of people that you can rely on and can rely on you. And the more that you prove yourself to be someone that can be relied upon, the more people are willing to step up and help you, which again is in your best interest. And it's all of these things. When you think, break down, take for example any superhero or any hero character in a movie, and write down the attributes that they have that are attractive to you. And you're going to see it's pretty similar across the lines. It's going to be reliability. It's going to be accountability. It's going to be a moral code and standing up in the face of things that are difficult, overcoming obstacles and adversity. It's going to be these things over and over and over again. And so if you're not pursuing, and these things, they're there in these stories and for a reason, and it's not by chance. It's because they are the markers of the things that are good, that we mark as being good in our society, right? And so that it is in your best interest to pursue these types of virtues because they help create a more fulfilling and a more substantial and a more abundant life, right? And so that's the difference between self-interest and selfishness. There is a difference, and it's not splitting hairs. It's pretty significant. And so, again, if you're investing so much of your mental well-being and your mental health into anybody else, even if it's not an 84-year-old woman with pancreatic cancer and her well-being, if it's in somebody that's super healthy, if it's in something outside of your control, if you're investing that much time and energy into yourself, and it's not going into yourself, it's not going into your self-interestedness, then you're setting yourself up for failure, because the justice is going to die. The president's going to leave office. The party's going to lose power. And it's not, I'm not saying not to follow politics. I'm not saying that it's wrong for people to value those things. I think that it's great. I think it's what founded a really, really amazing project and experiment in the world that had never been seen before, where we value people individually, as having rights from ourselves. And before that point, that didn't really exist a whole lot, and it was that's not where value was acknowledged. It wasn't from the individual. It's a pretty cool experiment, pretty cool system to come up with, and pretty unique, pretty nice way to piece together some cool parts of experiments of the past. but yeah, and so I saw this post and I almost lost my mind, because that's like my faith in humanity kind of got crushed a little bit when I saw that somebody was in so much fear over a change in the world that they have absolutely no control over. And it's mind blowing to me that would be the case. And it goes back to the last episode. If you didn't listen or watch that one, you've got to do it. We talk about these things that what's in your best interest, not what's in your best interest, excuse me. What matters and what doesn't, and what can you control and what can't you control. And we put this into a diagram, and we kind of drew it out, and it covers this. If you look at that, and if that woman, and if anybody who is feeling that way had listened to that episode and had actually taken action into it, their perspective would probably be a little bit different, because they would have already started shifting their priorities to, like, yes, I think that the Supreme Court is really important in the United States, but it's not what I can control, so I'm not going to invest my time, energy, or emotional well-being into it. Am I going to follow it? Sure. Is it important to know? Yes. Is it important to know about the potential repercussions of decisions and of massive changes? Absolutely. Absolutely. Can absolutely change the landscape of the United States for a very long time, because these positions are filled for their lifetime positions, lest you choose to step down. And most people don't. So yeah, it's important, but it's not something to get your panties in a twist about. I mean, if that's your life and if that's your choice, and that's what I talked about in last week's episode. It's like, some people could listen to that episode and they could acknowledge everything that I'm saying. Like, yeah, that's right and that's good. That's good advice. I'm invested in politics. I'm not letting that go. It's not anything that I have control over. National politics has very little to do with anything that will actually affect my life personally, and I'm not gonna drop it. It's part of who I am. It's part of my identity. And you know what? People are gonna make that choice. And you know what that does for you, though? That creates opportunities, because that's people that aren't choosing themselves. They're kind of getting out of your way. Like, okay, well, if you're gonna go spend your time over there, well, I'm going to spend my time over here trying to work on me and trying to be a better version of me. And thankfully, at least you're not in my way. And so that's cool. That's nice. I can appreciate that. So, there's an interesting... So I heard this quote, and I think that it's probably a good way to kind of start heading towards the end of this and wrapping it up. And it's from Christopher Hitchens. I actually heard it. I heard somebody else reference this quote, and it was on Joe Rogan. But it's a quote by Christopher Hitchens, and it states, "Everyone has to choose their own regrets." It's a really interesting thought. Everyone has to choose their own regrets. And so this is it's a cool play on this idea of choice that we've been talking about today. And when you think about the things of the past, think about some of the things that you've done throughout your life that you regret, and think about the way that they make you feel, right? So maybe you got a little bit drunk and made a fool of yourself. Maybe you tried to jump over a bonfire after drinking half a bottle of scotch with your friends, or a whole bottle with your friends, perhaps half the bottle yourself. This may feel oddly specific, as if I'm referencing something that I would be personally familiar with. I don't know what you're talking about. I would never do such a thing, like try to leap over a bonfire, running down a hill, and then fall on fire. But maybe you did that. Maybe that's a little bit of a regret. Maybe you got a tattoo that was pretty funny at the time, or meant something at the time, and now it kind of stands as a relic of the mistake of your youth. Maybe that's a thing. That's not my thing, actually. That's not a me thing, but it could have been. Very easily could have been. Maybe you invested a bunch of time and energy into an idea trying to start a business, and then it ended up falling flat on its face. And maybe you even invested a bunch of time and energy into a relationship. And maybe that relationship even turned into a marriage. And maybe it ended up being more destructive to your life than productive. Maybe. The thing is, with all of these, we can look back on them, and with the right perspective and with the right level of introspection and gratitude, we can look back on all of these things and truly acknowledge that there was some good there. There was some good. There was some fun. You know, I had a good time with my friends out, you know, camping and being foolish youngsters. And the tattoo can remind you of a time with friends and in a place that was very free and loving. And I mean, even if it's not loving, but like just, you know, the freedom and the youth and the energy of going out there and just doing stuff, you know. And then your business. So like, there should never be a time that you look back on your life and go, man, I sure wish I didn't try to start my own business. I sure wish I didn't try to pursue that passion of mine. Just never. Like, there can be a regret in the fallout from it. And the same thing with the relationship. When you think about like not pursuing something, like that would be the regret. You know, you could view it as like, oh, I wasted this many years of my life. Like, really, how much did you get out of it, though? How much did you learn? How much did you grow? It's cool, man. It's really cool stuff. And so, when you look back, like, those are all regrets that I would happily choose. And actually, there's another part of the conversation. Wendell Berry had said something to the effect of, if of all the things that you could look back on your life and regret, how did it go? At the end of your life, when you're looking back from your tombstone, what are you gonna value? Of all the things you could regret, what would you regretting the raising of children, you know, or having a bunch of money in the bank account when you're dead. And it's, you know, basically trying to emphasize the importance of life and relationships and posterity versus dollars and cents. And so it's just it's an interesting concept when you spend some time and you think about it, and you think that, you know, our time on this planet is not long. Our span of time where we are kind of fully developed and fully physically capable is also very limited. Is even more limited. And so what we choose to do, and the actions we choose, and the things that we do that we choose to regret, that we may regret later, it's really important. I love that. I love that everyone has to choose their own regrets. And so, would you choose the regret of having invested so much time and energy into somebody else, into something else? And that's the thing, is that all of those regrets that I put up there that I could kind of look back and smile on and chuckle about a little bit, they're all things that I would choose, right? If I had to choose, look back in my life and choose the regrets, I'd choose those. I'd choose them again. Again, the tattoo one is kind of a reference. You can take that on if you want to. You can use many different things. I could look back at different hairstyles that I had. Dreadlocks. Yeah, I've had dreadlocks. That's one that I regret, and it's all right. You know, like it's a funny regret. But I'm gonna look back and smile, like I said. But yeah, that's those are I happily look back and reflect upon and think that, yeah, that was silly, but it was good, you know. And do you want to look back and think, you know, I'm really happy that I wasn't able to mourn the passing of somebody that I respected as a visionary, as a trailblazer for women. I wasn't able to mourn her death because I was so afraid. Is that the regret that you want to have? Not me. Not this guy. And that's what I got for you guys, man. I appreciate it. I know that this was a different one. It's a little bit current events kind of an episode, but it's important. It's important. And if this is for those not in the U.S. and not familiar, I hope that you were able to get something out of it. Let me know. We can steer clear of these things in the future if it's not hitting home with a bunch of people. But as world and life events occur, I do want to tie them into the things in the show because I feel like that's relevant. Like, I don't want to be talking about resilience and the resilience tools and how you can change your life in a vacuum. I love theory. I don't want it to get twisted and say something that I don't believe. I love theoretical conversations. I love philosophical conversations. It's probably some of my funnest and most favorite things to do. However, I do this show as a way to kind of bridge the gap. My goal has always been to make these tools into something that is tangible and applicable into your life. And I feel like when we bring in the current events and the things that are happening, then we stand a much better chance of seeing how we can actually apply these tools in our lives. And so I hope that today was a good first kind of stepping stone into incorporating that kind of stuff. I think that like I said, I think it's really important. I think that it's beneficial, and I hope you guys do too, because there's probably going to be more of that going on in the future, and I will assure you that it will not always be political. It will not always be American based. I do recognize that I have a global audience, and I appreciate that, and I love all of you. I'm so grateful that you guys come here and check out the show. I'm so grateful that you guys have been participating in some of the training events that I've had going on, and there are more to come. And I'll get you some dates on that stuff, because a lot of it should be coming in the very near term. I know I keep saying that, and some of them have come. More to come very soon. I love you guys. I appreciate you, and I will see you here again next week.